So, okay, there we go. Now all the tech is sorted. Everyone, first of all, a huge welcome to you all. We really love Education USA, and in fact, it's part of our origin story. And so what we're going to do in the next hour, as you've seen on the description, is we are going to talk a little bit about how we can support your students and what that might look like. In general, what you need to know is that we function, our nonprofit functions as almost a emergency room for higher education. So as you know, there are many students all around the world who every year, and you've seen them in your offices, will apply for full financial aid in the United States. And maybe by April 1st, they don't have a viable financial offer. And that's where we would come in to offer them a second chance at higher education. So we're really pleased to have you here. We want to thank you all for your time. And so we will go through a couple of things tonight. Let me share my screen. Okay, we're going to go through our mission, how we came to be, which our origin, as I said, is tied to Education USA, how we select students, how you can nominate students. And then Melissa will also talk, we're going to give you a little bit of a mini PD session on how to write letters of effective recommendation. And then we'll take questions at the end. As we're talking, if you'd like, you can put your questions into the side and we will take and answer the questions at sort of like 45 minutes in. Okay, first thing I'd like to explain is that we are an international initiative. Last year, we worked with 41 students from 17 different countries. We worked with 11 refugees, and we specifically focus on high achieving, low income students who want access to an English medium higher education opportunity. We are a team that spans the world. You can see, and you might even recognize some folks on these screens. We actually have a couple of second chance counselors here in the room. And each of us is really invested in the mission of trying to make sure that talent isn't left on the table by the end of the cycle. I think it's really important to understand how we began, and that is we began in 2018. Some of you actually might have heard about what happened in 2018. There was a university in Texas that revoked scholarships due to a budgetary error. And they took the scholarships away on April 13th of 2018. And we all know what April 13th means. It means that kids are done with the process. They have started their visa applications, their I-20s. So this university took away scholarships from 60 students, and these scholarships were full tuition, room, and board, so full rides. And what happened was the kids in Nepal, some of them went to EdUSA Nepal. So you might recognize this because your colleagues at Education USA in Nepal and Kathmandu were part of our origin story. And what happened is Selena Malla, who was an Education USA advisor at the time, said on social media, "Hi, I'm reaching out to all of our HEI colleagues, our higher education institution colleagues, because we have students who are in a crisis situation." And she goes on to say that some of these kids have turned down offers, they've withdrawn from other institutions, and that they basically have no option, and could the international community step forward to help? So what we did was we, myself and Selena and other folks in Kathmandu and around the world, stepped forward to kind of mobilize a movement and find the students, vet the students, work with the students over Zoom. We were advised to get something called Zoom at the time, and this was pre-COVID. And we started to work with the students remotely. We verified all the students to make sure that, in fact, they had lost a scholarship. And then what we did was we leveraged our networks. And we sent, I think the first email that we sent went out to 1,200 people around the world. And we were looking for other opportunities for students to be able to take advantage of. We were looking for scholarships that might still be left at the end of the cycle. And we were looking for English medium programs. And I'm going to speed ahead, but what ended up happening was we were able to, over the course of several months, find all 60 students. we were able to seat 56 of them. 54 of them were able to go to 6 countries, and they earned about $10 million in scholarships. There were it was about $180,000 in gap funding that we needed to raise, and we raised it. We used press, we leveraged our networks, and we were able to help all 54 students go. This is in the middle of the cycle. You can see here Selena Mala down here. Her office actually won an award for the work that they did for these students. And you can see the students as well. This is some of our team. And you can see that they are landing in different countries. So for example, this student landed in South Korea. We have a couple of kids who landed in Qatar, other kids who landed in the United States, some in Germany, one in Australia. And what we learned is that there is a space after April 1st where there is some possibility. And so after 2018, because we had been in the press, kids kept coming back to our team and saying, hey, could you help me? And they weren't kids who had suffered a budgetary error or a scholarship revocation, but they didn't have a seat, a viable financial aid seat. And so we kept getting queries from students. And we started to work with several students per year, and then that number started to grow. And then in 2022, I left my job at United World College in Southeast Asia. Like Melissa, I'm a college counselor. And we launched this volunteer initiative into a nonprofit. Since then, we have been working with students in the post-April 1st space to seat them, to give them a second chance at higher education. And we mainly work with students who are coming from emerging economies, developing countries. And here you can see 7 students who we worked with last year, and they span the countries of Nigeria, Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, Turkey, and Vietnam. And our team worked with these students over a very intense period of about 6 to 8 weeks in the summer, from around April, May, June. And we helped them find a full or near full scholarship after April 1st. Over the past 6 years, we have ended up seating about 168 kids from 26 emerging economies. As I said, last year, we seated 41 students from 17 countries. And we want to help students, even if they are the most vulnerable students and living in a refugee camp. And so last year, we were able to help 5 kids from Palestine. We helped 2 refugees from Afghanistan, a refugee from Syria, and 2 refugees from the Ukraine. And these, by the way, are all students who you nominated. So some of these kids came from Education USA. Other kids came from CBOs or NGOs. Other kids still came from, for example, admissions officers. We send a huge email to admissions officers in the United States. And we say, who is the kid on your wait list that you cannot forget about? Would you like to nominate this child to Second Chance? And then our team works at this breakneck, intense pace to try and help these students learn about new schools, learn about new markets. Last year, we seated students in Qatar, in Canada, in the United States, in Hong Kong, and in South Korea. And this year, we intend to do the same. Last year, we had a special partnership. You might be wondering about the Palestinian students with Georgetown University in Qatar, who this is a really, I mean, everybody here probably knows about Georgetown in the United States in Washington, D.C., but there's also a Georgetown University in Qatar, which is a satellite campus. And this campus is a foreign service school. So they want kids who want to go into diplomacy or international relations, history, economics. They have 4 majors. And so we did a special partnership with them to have them, we worked with them to find Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. And we ended up sending them 5 students from Palestine. And 3 of those students are now on their campus. You can see them here. 2 of the other 2 students are still in Gaza and West Bank, and actually Georgetown University of Qatar extended their admission period so that those students could come this year once borders are safely opened. I want to give you a sense of how we select students, because we have students who apply, but we don't select every student who applies. We select students who we feel are competitive enough to make it in the post-April 1st space. So first and foremost, please understand that we are an access program. If you have a student who can afford $20,000 or $30,000, they have to submit their CSS profile to us and their financial aid documentation. We aren't the right fit. We are really looking for students who are really, really low income. And by that, I mean, we typically work with a kid who has 0 to 5,000 USD that they can spend per year for 4 years. We work with kids who have applied to the United States who have no financial viable offers. And so do we work with kids who are waitlisted? Yes. Do we work with kids who have gaps? 100%. In fact, those are the kinds of kids that we're looking for. We're looking for that talent that almost made it, but that didn't. And we know, and we often find that students aren't completely aware of this, how competitive, you all know as Education USA folks, how insanely competitive it is to try to apply for financial aid in the United States. It's less than 1% of the market that offers financial aid. And then at the schools that do offer financial aid, it's often less than a 1% admit rate. And that is an unpublished rate. So we all know how hard it is. And I think that at the end, in April, every single one of you might have seen a student who you think is phenomenal, but they don't have a financially viable offer. That's a student that we would love for you to consider nominating to us. We look at academics. When we say high achieving, we define high achieving by a couple of metrics. First of all, we look at the SAT. Some of our partners in East Asia require a 1450 and above. So we also look for kids who are 1450 and above if they have taken the SAT. If they haven't taken the SAT or the ACT, we look for kids who are in the top 1 to 5%, the top percentile of national exams. So for example, the WASI examination in West Africa, or the NECTA in Tanzania, or other national curriculums are completely, absolutely fine as long as the kids have scored and they can prove that they scored within the top percentile. We look for these markers because we want to be able to take a student and have a reasonable chance of seating them after April 1st. We also look for students who have graduated within the past 2 years. If a student has had 3, 4, 5 gap years, that unfortunately will not work for a partner institution, for the institutions that we've generally sent kids to. So we ask that they've been at most on their 2nd gap year. As I said, we're generally working with a kid who is pretty low resourced. We want to be a destiny bender for the student, a trajectory changer. We want to be helping them gain social and global and economic mobility. And that's why we have this sort of 3-tiered selection criteria. So you've heard about both 2 tiers, one academic, one financial. And then the last thing that we look for is we look for character. We look for character and impact and leadership. We tend to weed students out who are on, for lack of a better term, their own individual march towards greatness. And the reason why we do is because we run a cohort program. The only way that you can seat 60 students after April 1st, 60 Nepali students after April 1st, is if everybody agrees to certain rules. So what we had said to those students were, we're going to seat all of you or none of you. Like, we want this to be a cohort. So we don't care if in 2018 a kid came to us and they were the 60th student, or they were the 1st student, or they were the 21st student. We wanted to help every single one of those students. And so we run a cohort model. Kids will come to remote meetings with us. They will be paired with a pro bono counselor. This program is free to students. And they will work in small groups in a cohort model. And so we're really looking for kids who not only will do well with teamwork and collaboration, but also bring that as well to an institution. Because in an institution, we talk to hundreds of institutions and we try to convince them to allow kids to be considered after April 1st, waive application fees, do a late consideration of scholarships, and they will do that for a student who is not just an academic scholar, but a student who is really civic minded. So we tend to look for signals of service, character, leadership. We do look for geoswervability. And by that, I mean, our name is, importantly, and I know everybody here is Education USA, we look for students who want the US, but also if they can't get the US, get something beyond the United States. So as I mentioned, Canada or Qatar or Hong Kong, an English medium high level program. And so we do look for kids who are not just singularly focused on the United States, at least after April 1st. Okay, a little bit about our nomination process. Last year, we received around over 300 nominations, and every single student that we chose was a nominated student. Kids can apply without the nomination, but we take nominations really seriously. And in particular, we take Education USA nominations so seriously. We admire what you all do. We are humbled by what you do. Our origin story has to do with Education USA. We feel you are tied to our identity. We also know that you are the first frontline at seeing local students and knowing local teachers and the local challenges in your context. And so when an Education USA advisor nominates somebody to us, that kid gets a lot of consideration. So you can submit up to 3 nominations. The reason why it's 3 is because if you had 20 kids, we would want to know sort of who your top 3 are. And the deadline, and please everybody note this, it's a fast turnaround. Nominations open on March 23rd, they close on April 4th, and they do really close on April 4th. And the reason why they close so soon is because our team is going to try to bring in for 40 students, $6 million of scholarship in a really small, compressed area of time that generally people do not work in. And we're going to help them as well navigate a visa process. So we have a lot of speed that is part of our process. So the deadline is April 4th for nominating. And when you nominate a kid, they will receive an email from us and they will get the application. The application has some second chance questions to it, but most of the questions will be questions that they're really familiar with. And they will also upload their common application and also their financial aid documentation so that we can verify that they are in fact a high achieving low income student. I can't say enough about the power of your nominations. Sometimes people tell us, oh, that was just 5 minutes of my time, and it changed a kid's entire life. We have had, and I know that the Nigeria office is here, we've had nominations from Nigeria successfully. We've seated kids, nominations from Nepal, nominations from other competitive college clubs, Education USA in Kazakhstan as well. We had several kids who we worked with because they saw a blurb on the website and on the Education USA website, and then the Education USA Kazakh folks nominated students to us. The 5 or 10 minutes that you put into doing this can really help students. And you can see here, this is a gentleman from Nepal. He nominated, those are both of his kids. One ended up in the United States and one ended up in South Korea. And both of them feel that had it not been for this gentleman's nomination, and we know had it not been for this gentleman's nomination, that these kids wouldn't have had a second chance at higher ed. Okay, in order to receive information about nomination, you can scan this QR code, this beautiful QR code that Melissa has put together. We will also give you the website. We are at secondchance.global. So you can see, I'll go back to this here. Oops, excuse me, maybe I won't. Secondchance.global is our website, and we have a little page called For Nominators. And if you just sign up, then we will put your name on a mailing list. If for whatever reason you can't scan this and you're thinking, gosh, I can't get on this website because my data is slow, just send a private note to me or Melissa with your email, and we'll put you on the mailing list. We need your name, your country, your Education USA office, and your email address. And we will make sure that you get nomination information.
Don't, the link expired because I used a free one. Sorry,
Oh,
everybody, but
okay.
I just put in the chat. And this is really when you click on the link that I put in the chat, the secondchance.global/nominate, there's a yellow button that says nominate a student. Right now, that's to join the mailing list, and that's what the QR code was for.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Melissa.
Well, sort of, thank you. Thank you
Um,
for an expired code.
uh, okay, I think that covers it. I'm gonna just ask my colleagues. I've got Melissa here, and then some of you may know Karen Caradeones. Karen, are you in the room?
I am, Joan. I'm just off screen because I'm so frightening to look at right now.
Oh, don't worry. I just wanted to ask my colleagues, Melissa and Karen, if they wanted to add anything, if I've missed anything.
I don't see that you've missed anything. I think you were really clear.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Karen Caradeones, everybody. Some of you might know her from her work at Bentley. She's also on our team. Karen, thanks for being here. And
I was going to say, just from other nomination and webinars that we've done recently, a couple of things that you've highlighted in recent webinars. One is that, when we're thinking of who these second chance students are, Joan, you've said it often, it's these are the students that are keeping us awake at night because we know that they deserve an opportunity that will change their lives or the lives of their families or communities. They're bright, they're capable, they're, as you say, the best, the first, the only student like this that we may have ever met in our careers. And so just zooming out a little bit when we think of the 300, last year's 300 nominations and how we had to work through a selection process, this was often, and it was holistic. We gather as much information as we can, and also we try to put that energy into, out of, for example, 300 students, into these 50 students that sometimes our pool goes down to 40, and then we work to place them in the partner institution spaces that we have. So yeah, I think that's just like a recap of everything you've just said. And I can keep talking about letters of recommendation.
right, maybe I'll just, Melissa, you just reminded me of something. So maybe I'll share one story while you mention this. Let me just share a good story about a kid from Zambia, because I think that he is a good example. He was nominated by his Education USA advisor in Lusaka. And he was a student who had 9 distinctions. And we understand from his record that 9 distinctions at the highest level in Zambia is really rare. He had been nominated by his Education USA advisor, and then he was actually nominated by a small liberal arts college in the United States. His name is Muya. And Muya joined our program. He had tried twice. So he had taken 2 gap years to apply to the United States and kept ending up on wait lists. He joined our program, and I think he really kind of felt like this was his last shot. And he is now studying computer science on a full scholarship in Hong Kong. He knows how to use chopsticks. He went to the market and he called us. A really funny story. He's like, oh, I thought that they were going to have tomatoes here like they have in Zambia. And then he said, oh, I found out they actually have persimmons here because he and his friend took the tomatoes back home, cooked them like tomatoes, but then found out that they were persimmons. So we've had, and this kid says, we can actually send you the video of the student who he gives a testimonial about this. He really feels like he has had a real shot at global and economic and social opportunity now that he's in Hong Kong. Had he graduated and gone to school in Zambia and gotten a degree he would in no way be able to have the earning potential that he can have in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, you can also stay for 2 years. You don't have to get an OPT, a CPT. And so he's one student who I'm thinking of who really was benefited by an Education USA nomination. Another student that I'm thinking of is Jajesh, who is from Nepal. He comes from the Opportunity Funds Program. He also did not have a viable financial aid offer by the time we got to April 1st. We worked with him, and he is now at a university in the Western United States on a full scholarship with a job, and he even has a little bit of surplus money. And he was a student, if you all know the Opportunity Funds Program in Nepal, this is a program that really, like us, is looking for low income students. And so this student barely had enough money even for an air ticket. And so we wanna ask your help in identifying kids who you are losing sleep over and who we can help because we have a mechanism. The larger mission of what we're trying to do is we are trying to build a new mechanism for admissions that is last minute. You can get social goods like housing and employment benefits and healthcare at the last minute, but you can't get education at the last minute. So what you all are kind of seeing is our attempt at building something new for the admissions landscape that will hopefully benefit both you and your students. On that note, Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can talk a little bit about recommendations, and then we'll take questions at the end.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for screen sharing. I appreciate it. So I want to spend just about 10 or 15 minutes today talking about just a quick check-in on what I think is really important in all the letters of recommendation that all of us are asked to write. So whether that's for the second chance nomination process, whether that's for university admissions, your students come back to you as alumni to ask you to write for jobs or internships or things like this. And it could be that some of us in the room, we don't have enough time to pull right now or get a pulse on this, but some people in the room are using what we are seeing as a best practice that we're going to talk about this morning, a best practice of using an organized bulleted narrative. And we're going to talk about that approach. But I want to say what we want. Well, let me back up to a part of what I do now as a freelance college counselor is I read applications for Northeastern University. I've done this for 4 years. So every year I am reading 100 applications a week, roughly. And to assist in, sorry, I need to minimize this chat or it's going to pop up and confuse me. So I'm reading applications as a reader for Northeastern University, which is just one university. I am still writing letters and assisting with my students in various ways. And I work with the team at American School of Japan to assist their counselors with reading as well. And before this, like I said, I was a college counselor writing up to 75 letters every year of recommendation for my own students. So I don't write as much anymore, but I come at this, and I've also attended a lot of webinars and trainings recently about these things. So if you can go back one screen, yeah. So I definitely want to encourage, if you are already using the bulleted narrative that we're about to talk about, I want to encourage another best practice, two other best practices really, which one is find a buddy, find a colleague, find a teaching friend if you don't have a counseling friend who can be your audience. Like, we encourage our students to run their essays by us and get feedback. This is brave and it is a little bit scary at first. When I was at Singapore American School, this is something that we implemented several years ago. And at first, to be on a reading team and to have other colleagues read my work, which I was very proud of and felt really good about, felt scary and was a little apprehensive. But I will say it's one of the most important things I think in the last 5 years of my career that I have ever done, which is have an audience to say, hey, if this is the best, the first, the only student, the types of students we're talking about this morning, am I doing a good enough job to represent these points and represent these character highlights that I want to draw attention to? And we do need to take risks when we're supporting these kinds of students to really kind of put our neck out there to say, to draw attention to any challenges they've had, to draw attention to their unique qualities that we want to draw forth. And the structure that we're going to talk about this morning, we think really does that. And we'll share just a few minutes, just a few points about what admissions officers are saying about sort of best practice and what they want to see. And then again, really drawing attention to these key indicators of what we're looking at for students when we're writing for them, because we want things to fit onto one page. If we can, we want things, the less is more idea. And we're gonna, if you flip to the next slide, Joan, when we say less is more, and this is not for you to read every word, by the way, it's just to show you the traditional narrative letter of recommendation, which you or your teachers, we typically write. On the left, it's full of transition sentences and really well-structured paragraphs. Sometimes in admission, when I'm reading applications and admissions friends, if you're on the call, you'll see this. You might see 2 or 3 pages of this type of writing. And when you are looking at 15 to 20 to 30 applications a day, and you're seeing these kinds of letters from teachers and counselors, it's very hard to focus your attention on what is being said about the student in a way that highlights their uniqueness. And so then what you see on the right is what we're calling the organized or the bulleted structure. It is probably essentially the same amount of information. And we'll talk about the structure in a second, but it really hones in on the most important parts of what you're writing about. So that's just a basic visual. And Joan, if you can go to the next slide. So the benefits really are providing clear structure through the headings that you're using. We'll look at one, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of resources as well and examples and places where you can go next with this to see more. But what we see is the use of headings. So we have an introduction, we have academic highlights, personal highlights, and then a closing heading. And then we do encourage the bullet points to involve the evidence. So instead of just saying this person has led these organizations, the bullet points will allow you to really dive into what that says about their qualities. So not that they just were a leader, or not that they did just take the most challenging coursework, but that we are able to highlight the things that then that you can go a little bit further. You can go 1 or 2 steps further with why you're sharing these bullet points. And then we hope that this also streamlines your writing process and helps you in your efficiency, and really minimizing on things like wasting space on transitions and the style of your writing and that sort of thing. And then, of course, just delivering the most pertinent information to admissions professionals who we know are reading so many applications every day during reading season. You can go to the next slide. So I won't read all of these. And again, this will be shared when we finish the presentation. But it's just a couple of US-centric admissions offices who have been part of presentations or trainings on this type of writing. And what they're saying really is that, this is really helpful. I like this formatting because it draws my attention quickly to what you want me to see and what you think is so important. And this was just, again, a small portion of those comments. And you can just go to the next slide, Joan. So on the right, it's a little bit bigger. And again, we'll be sharing this, but this is an example of it. This is just one page. This is a student that I wrote a letter for a couple of years ago. He's now studying at Carnegie Mellon. And although he was not a low-income student, he was a high-achieving student. And he was essentially the top student. We don't have a ranking. And oftentimes in the schools that we're working in, or the students that we're working with, they don't benefit from being the valedictorian or being the #1 student based on a ranking. We don't have that indicator as much anymore. But what we do have are indicators of greatness in other areas. So when you see how I set my letter up for this student, who was extremely successful throughout the entire process, not the least of which is that he ended up at Carnegie Mellon, but I really felt compelled to draw attention to, within a school that I was working at with extremely talented, high achieving students and peers, and this happens a lot when I'm working with the counselors at the American School in Japan, all of the students are doing really great things. So within this structure, and most of us in the office at that time had moved to this structure, we were able to say, and for admissions counselors, this is really important when they're reading the letters, or nominators for organizations like Second Chance, is what makes this student stand out? What are the things that, not that they took all of the top classes, but what were the things about their research or their areas of impact that you want to use 3 to 5 or 6 bullet points to say you have to know this about this student. And then if you look at that second, there's an intro paragraph, there's distinctive qualities. The distinctive qualities, or it could be for some of our students that we're working with through Second Chance and who you're seeing, is some of the really distinct challenges that they've faced and overcome. So this is something that's extremely important, that in collaboration with the student, maybe what their essays are about, what their hardships have been, the challenges that they've overcome. If you're not highlighting those in a way that draws out and draws attention to that, these challenges have also given the students the opportunity to overcome and to meet these challenges and exceed these challenges, then offices won't know this. And so oftentimes when I'm reading letters, counselors might feel hesitant to talk about challenges overcome. But in reality, it would be really helpful in these scenarios with these types of students that Joan has been talking about, that we see, to say what these things are, and the qualities and characteristics that have come from leadership, or the projects that your students have worked on, or the context that they come from. I think it's always best practice to chat with the student or family if you're working with them, to gain permission to say, what do you want me to highlight? What are the things that I can help through this letter to best support and corroborate what you're saying and what you're wanting to highlight in your own applications. And really, when I'm working with counselors as a reading buddy, I'm often saying, well, why does this matter? Okay, this student did this thing, the student did this research project or took these really intense classes, but why does it matter? Why, did they change lives? Will they change lives? What is their potential? That they did these things, what will we expect from them in university? So I think you always want to say to yourself, and if you have the reading buddy, or if you are a buddy for somebody, or you want a teacher or somebody to evaluate your work, is really to say, does this portray deeply enough, why this matters, not just that they did it. We see exceptional students all the time. What we really want to draw out is why. And then if you can go to the next slide, Joan. I think some of the more practical advice, and we see this all the time, we have students who approach us for letters that we don't know quite well. Maybe we don't have enough information. Oftentimes as a counselor with a caseload of 55, 65, 75 students, we rely on students who maybe don't knock on our door as much, who don't come to us and ask us every question over and over again. And we don't know those students as much. And so what we have to rely on is maybe their student questionnaires, teacher comments, data that we can get from other people. I ask students to share essays with me if I'm writing letters. If a student hasn't completed a type of survey that draws attention to what they want you to write about, feel free to ask them that. What are you highlighting in your applications that I can also back, and really, even the challenges too, make sure that you're on the same page with that. And I think the bulleted narrative lends itself to specificity, to conciseness, and then to personalization. So it allows you to focus your time and your energy, which we all know you have very, very little time of, especially when somebody's asking you to, write many, many letters. We hope that this structure and the resources that we're going to share afterwards will help you become familiar with and comfortable with using a structure that cuts down on the time that it takes you to write these letters and allows you to be as specific as possible. And it allows your letters to be as effective as possible. And I think as well, the information I will share. If you are someone who has already adapted this style of writing, if you want to help with teaching others in your community, or if you're asked to present to communities that might benefit from this type of training, this will be part of the resources that we share. But we do encourage, and I did this with the American School in Japan this spring, is we started to train teachers on this model, and they were so grateful. They were like, oh, thank God, this will save me so much time. And we think it will also help with communities of students who we're sending lots of letters for, to, again, really make these as unique and impactful as possible. So yeah, I wanted to keep this concise. I think I did. I kept it under 15 minutes, but we do want to open this up to questions for our work or information about the narrative writing. I'm going to put the Google Doc of the resource that I will share as a PDF, but I'm going to put the Google Doc now in the chat, that has a lot more resources, information on what I just shared at a very fast pace.
Everybody, thank you. Melissa, thank you. Thank you so much. You did that really concisely. You gave a lot of information in a very concise amount of time. We hope that it's helpful to you all. I'd like to open the floor up. And I can see Chinenye, hi. Nice to see you. And I think Fatu, who's the REAC from West Africa. I think I saw you earlier. Thank you for being here. Oh, there you are. Hi, Fatu. Thank you. Education USA, we're really, really happy that you have spent some time with us. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we've talked about? You can unmute, raise your hand, ask the question. Yes, Chinenye.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Melissa, for that great presentation. My one question is, for a student whose SAT or ACT score is below, the expected 1450, but then they meet all the other criteria and maybe even exceed, the other criteria in terms of being in the top 5% of their national exams, the financial need, as well as, community impact and all of that. Is it still okay to nominate them, or is that SAT standardized test score really key to, their success?
That's a really great question. And can I just say thank you to your office right now, because you guys have done so much for so many kids over the years, and I've seen it firsthand. That's a guideline for us, but it's not set in stone. So we have departed from it at times. If you looked at our cohort from last year, I would say the majority of kids meet that, but not every single child meets that. So yes, it's particularly if they meet all the other criteria, like they've got great WASIs and they are huge impact and community leaders, and you can't forget about them, like you're losing sleep over the child, then we would encourage a nomination. Okay. I'm so sorry to not be able to say your name correctly. Natanumane Parsongwe. Would you like to share your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, my small name is Pascal.
Pascal.
Yeah, Pascal from Togo.
Oh, hi. I think we met.
Yeah, we met, and I'm happy to be here.
Yep.
Thank you for the great presentation. My question is referring to the type of admission format. Is it necessary for students to go through common application before they are qualified to be nominated for second chance? Yeah, this is the question I have.
Yeah, that is typical. But I would say that, so you're from Togo. So is it that you've got kids who are applying to France and they don't have a viable offer at the end of the cycle? What is your situation?
Yeah, like I'm managing the opportunity fund students.
Yep.
And they are the people who are actually highly achieving students, because the selection is part of the criteria for the selection of opportunity fund students in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And if they respect all the criteria and they send direct application to universities and later on they are not accepted? Or
Oh,
do they need to go back? Do they need to go back and fill a common application?
okay. Okay, so these are all kids who have applied to the United States, but they use direct portals versus the common application.
Yeah.
Then that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I think what they should do instead of submitting the common application is to submit, this is a little bit outside of our system, but we would still accept the student to submit a copy of something that they've submitted to the United States. So whether it's a PDF of a portal application that they've done or some
Okay.
equivalent, does that make sense? An equivalent would
Perfect.
be fine for us.
Perfect.
Particularly
Thank you.
from Education USA. We met your predecessor. I think his name was Basame.
Basil Kumi.
Yes, we
Basil.
met
Yeah.
him through International ACAC. And so thank you for
Okay.
being here.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay.
This is Samuel from Bogota, Colombia. And I get a lot of athletes who don't get accepted to a sports scholarship, but who still have very strong academics. Are they eligible for your program based on the fact that, yes, they are good in their GPA, and they get frustrated, of course, because we know what it is to get a sports scholarship. It's not that easy. And then, so they sort of take a year to sort of try to understand what to do because they were not accepted to any university, but they are still looking for opportunities like this. So have you had any cases like that? And have you had any students from South America or maybe Colombia who has been through your program?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of, I will say that for us, we would love South and Central American applications because we don't get that many. We have worked with kids from Brazil, and we also got a chance to work with a kid from the Dominican Republic this year. We were really, really happy about. And so we would heartily welcome Central and South America. And your question about student athletes, I have a follow-up question for you, which is that do they want your student athletes, must they go to the United States to be a student athlete?
No, they usually what they sort of look for is to try to get to the States. And of course, they want to keep playing their sports. I keep telling them, you could still do that, not as a student athlete, but still you can practice. But they are ready to just go for the academic side or to an academic scholarship if that's possible.
Yeah, so we would count student athleticism and teamwork as part of impact and character and community. So that would take care of that piece of it. I would say that as long as the student is open, because we wouldn't guarantee, for example, a D1 or a D3 school. We just can't do that in the post-table space, okay? It's hard enough to try to get a kid a full scholarship. And if the kid was open, for example, there are some sports scholarships in Hong Kong, but the level of sport in Hong Kong is not going to be the same as the level of sport in the United States. Like there isn't this sort of like NCAA clearinghouse in East Asia. So I would say as long as the student is open-minded, but if the student is really, really fixed and they're like, no, I have to go to the United States, then that doesn't fulfill our requirement of being more flexible because we're second chance at higher education, which includes the United States, but is not solely focused on the United States. Otherwise, we would be called second chance to the United States. So does that make sense? If you send the student to us and we work with them, we will include the United States 100%, but we can't guarantee that that will be the outcome.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to have you here from Colombia.
Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions?
I'm sorry, I think there was a question in the chat. Can we nominate a student? I don't know if you answered that one.
Okay, let's
Can
see.
we nominate?
Can we nominate a
nominate-
student from Chinenye? Yes, Chinenye did ask her question. I think we solved it, Chinenye, unless there's another question you had. Thank you. Thank you, Samuel. That's so kind of you to amplify her question. All right, any other questions that you all have?
I think it's amazing that you finish early.
Oh, everybody, we're gonna give you back your 5 minutes. Okay, we're gonna let the meeting out early. First of all, we just want to say, we know there are 470 Education USA offices around the world, and in every context I have worked in, whether it has been England or Singapore or Turkey,